Lesson 8.3, Video 1, Quadratic Functions in Vertex Form. I'm going to talk very briefly about this exploration because this should be done in class. But a brief overview would state that if the coefficient of x squared, in other words a, is greater than 1, then what happens is your parabola gets narrower and narrower. Okay, and by narrower, we're talking about a parabola that typically looks like this. What would happen as this happens, as a gets bigger than 1, it would become narrower or skinnier. Question 2. What if it's between 0 and 1? What if a is between 0 and 1? So we would have something like this. And what happens here is that it's going to be a decimal between 0 and 1, or a fraction that's between 0 and 1, and our parabola gets wider. In that case, then what would happen is a parabola that typically looks like this would become wider and flatter. Next one, what happens if the x squared, or the a, is negative? And we talked about this. That is that it opens downward. Now if we discuss something more interesting, here we have five x squared, then 5x squared plus 3, 5x squared minus 7 on the same set of axes. What happens to the graph y equals x squared when the number, or when a number, is added or subtracted after, that's a key piece here, after the x squared term? So we have plus 3 and a minus 7, and again, briefly going over this, is that your graph will go up or down. So if we add something, it shifts up. If we subtract something, it shifts down. And then if we talk about inside the parentheses, so now we have x plus 3 inside the parentheses, or x minus 7 inside the parentheses, the graph will shift left or right. Okay, so again, inside the parentheses is the key here. And if I add something, ironically enough, it shifts left. If I subtract something, my graph shifts to the right, the opposite of what you would think. So if we look at these two examples here, predict what will happen. And if we look at the question closely, we see a couple things going on. One is this number right here is negative, which means we have a upside down parabola. We have something being subtracted in the parentheses, subtracted from x, which means it'll shift to the right 1 unit. And then we have a plus 6 outside the parentheses, and that is going to make it shift up 6 units. And again, we can only get this information from things in vertex form. And vertex form will be discussed on the next page, but that is of the form y equals ax minus h plus k, and this is squared. So back to our last question. What will happen? Well, again, we notice that we have a positive 2, so it's going to open up. It's a value greater than 1, so it's going to be narrower, so I'll say narrow. You have a plus 7 here, so it's going to shift left 7 units. And you have a minus 4, so it's going to shift down 4 units. And this ends a brief overview of the expiration for Lesson 8.3, Video 1.